Thanks for joining me on episode 485 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Matt Woodrum, podcaster and father in training. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talents, and your treasures, having the calling to face your demons and struggle to become a great father for your children. And one way to be inspired to do this is to listen to the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend Scott Maynard.
And the problem is that that's often the trap that you get into. And so all of a sudden you create this generational habit of saying yes to everything and no to nothing. And it traps the family in a cycle of debt, in a cycle of non-decision, in a cycle of unhappiness and frustration. Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world. In today's episode about investing in others through stewarding your treasures, I talk with you about why you have to be careful in what you say yes to when it comes to your money, why every yes is multiple no's, and why knowing that helps you manage your money. As we talk about stewarding your treasures, wouldn't it be great if you could support this podcast and do it without costing yourself an extra dime? Turns out you can. All you have to do is use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon when you're ready to make a purchase via Amazon, and a small commission will come back to support the show. If you enjoy the show when you're ready to buy from Amazon, just use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon. We've talked a lot about saying yes to things and how that affects your time. How when you say yes to one thing, you're automatically saying no to many other things. Well, the same thing is true with your money. There's always an opportunity cost to any resource that's finite, and money is certainly a finite resource. You have to be really careful about what you say yes to with your money, because automatically, if you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to a whole collection of other opportunities, of other things that you could do with your money. You can't spend your money more than once. This is a danger that we often get into, where we begin to look at our savings account and we think about all of the different things we could do with it. And we make a big long list and we start to think that the money is there for all of those things. The same $5,000 or $6,000 that's in our bank, in our mind, becomes our emergency fund, our new couch fund, our vacation fund. It becomes the tool that we're going to use to put on the new roof. It becomes all of the things, when the reality is that that money is limited and probably can't do all of those things. You have to be very careful with what you say yes to with your money, because you automatically begin to say no to other things. This is one of the reasons that debt can be so insidious for us. It allows us to say yes to many things that we wouldn't have said yes to if we didn't have access to the debt. And what that means is, what debt really is to us is a way of leveraging future money for things that we're choosing to do in the present. We're saying yes to something today, and what that's going to do is force us to have to say no to something in the future. Something that we haven't even thought about yet, an opportunity that comes along, a new thing that comes along that we really want to do, but we can't, because with the debt, we can't afford to do it. This is why I teach people to try to avoid debt if at all possible, because The yes that you say today ends up limiting you in the future. Every yes that you say, whether you say it with cash or with debt, leads to multiple no's. And at first glance, that might be depressing. You're thinking to yourself, but wait, what can I do then? And the truth is that what you need to do, like, oh, so many times you've heard me talk about this, is you have to get back to the core of what you're after. You have to identify what are your real priorities. What are your real values? What are the things that are non-negotiables for you? What are the most important things? And you put your money towards those things. And honestly, I'll tell you the truth, when I'm working with people as a coach, I kind of don't care what their non-negotiables are from the point of view of, I'm not going to argue with you. If your most important thing is to keep your kids in private school, and that means that you have to give up cable and give up the new car and give up 7 other things, wonderful. If you've done the time and the effort to really think about it and you've aligned that with your true core values, then that's exactly what you should do. Conversely, if you have something that's a non-negotiable, like a new BMW, always driving a brand new car becomes something that's vitally important to you, fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you align everything else around that goal and make sure that you can do it without that car owning you. See, the problem is oftentimes what we do is we finance all the stuff that we want, and then we do the things that we find non-negotiable, and there's not enough money to go around and do both. And so we end up going into debt. And again, what does that do? That means that there's no's in the future. That means that money that you would have put into the kid's college fund doesn't go there. And now the kid has no choice but to take out student loans. At least that's what everyone will tell you. And the problem is that that's often the trap that you get into. And so all of a sudden you create this generational habit of saying yes to everything and no to nothing. And it traps the family in a cycle of debt, in a cycle of non-decision, in a cycle of unhappiness and frustration. What I teach instead is that you go back to the core. You really examine your non-negotiables. You really think about them. And you make sure that they're not in alignment just with what you feel today, but with the real values that you have for the life of the relationship, for the entire time that you're dealing with money. Because as you begin to know those things and know those core things that you absolutely are going to say yes to, it begins to help you filter. It begins to help you manage your money better. It begins to make it easier to make choices. And just like within the time we talked about creating a someday maybe list, you can do the exact same thing with money. You can begin to create a priority list and a dream list. What are the things you want to do with money that you don't have yet? But don't go do them with debt. Instead, find the ways to get the money and then do it. And in that way, your dreams don't become a nightmare. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of treasures, you can sign up for our treasures tips by going to inspiredstewardship.com/treasures or text in the U.S. 44222 treasures tips. And we'll send you 5 weeks of our best tips on stewarding your treasures. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.